Hello, everyone. This is Kevin Moss with the Connecticut Green Bank. I want to welcome you to our Fleet Electrification Accelerator launch webinar. We're really excited to be launching this program and sharing it with you today, and hope that this webinar will help get the word out to schools across Connecticut about some of the school bus electrification work we're up to. Next slide, Jenny. So the Connecticut Green Bank is the nation's first state-level green bank. And we essentially work to rally capital to various clean energy market sectors. And so in our kind of 15 years of existence, we've expanded our market focus over the years. So I'd say early on, we did a lot of work in the rooftop solar and energy efficiency sectors. And since then, we've continued to innovate. We run the state's battery storage program for residential and commercial customers. And now we're expanding our focus into the clean transportation sector, which has always been in our statutory mandate. But with the recent passage of legislation in Connecticut, we see a really strong opportunity to support school bus electrification. So that's been a big focus of ours for the past year or so. Next slide. And so today I'm going to give a little bit of a quick overview for folks about state clean transportation policy that affects school bus electrification and school bus planning, provide a little bit of a snapshot on some of the sort of the regulatory situation, which will influence kind of the market building, market creation potential here in Connecticut. And then we'll turn it over to our friends at CALSTART to talk about the accelerator program that they're going to be helping the Green Bank run. So in Connecticut, Public Act 22-2025 passed in 2022, and it created electric school bus or zero emission school bus deployment requirements for both on a statewide basis for 2040, but then an intermediate target in 2030 for our environmental justice communities. And so those are really the school districts that the Green Bank is focused on serving, both generally and through this program. And so we're really excited to partner with some of those on the planning side and also the investment side down the road. And so one of the other policy levers that I wanted to highlight there is the fact that school districts can now enter into 10-year transportation services agreements with their school bus operators if the contract or the fleet includes electric school buses. And so that can really help school districts from a budgeting and planning standpoint, but as the Green Bank can really enable us to make large investments that support school bus electrification just because of that longer investment timeline. And then I'll just point out that there are various grant resources available at DEEP and the Department of Economic and Community Development that can be braided with the Green Bank's low interest financing resources. And so we have a really strong capacity to kind of work strategically with those other state agencies and kind of bring the best funding package to bear. And so certainly reach out to us with any thoughts on how to tap into those programs or folks to know at our sister state agencies. And then moving on to the regulatory side. So the Public Utilities Regulatory Authority for a few years has been running docket number 21-09-17, which is essentially focused on the medium and heavy duty electric vehicle sectors. And so I'd say there's three main kind of topics and then three main sectors that are the focus of that docket. So on the sector side, it's school buses, transit buses, and then last mile delivery fleets. And then as part of looking at supporting those sectors, PURA and the EDCs are looking at, the electric distribution companies are looking at infrastructure incentives that would help support some of the costs to install this infrastructure. There's consideration of creating incentives to help defray the costs of EV chargers. And then really importantly as well, they're also considering essentially creating a new utility rate that's specific to this sector that essentially kind of more accurately matches the billing structure with the sort of typical charging pattern that a school bus or a transit bus may utilize. And so those kind of electricity costs are more, I'd say, accurately priced based on the charging cycle. And so we really see those as key market enabling developments. And then in addition to those two sort of funding and operating cost pieces, there's also a technical assistance component of the docket. And so the Green Bank has actually been designated by PURA already as the administrator of this Fleet Advisory Services program that we've now rebranded as the Fleet Electrification Accelerator. And in the near term, we're going to be focused on supporting the state's goals related to school bus electrification. For those that are interested in participating in the docket, I will highlight that briefs are due on Friday and that a final decision is anticipated in August. And I think at the Green Bank, we're just really excited to have that final decision because we think it'll really act as a market enabling moment and just provide that certainty on the infrastructure cost side and the ongoing cost to charge these vehicles. So we're really excited to get that clarity soon. And then next slide, perfect. So as I mentioned, the Green Bank is going to be really focused on supporting the states that are on that, or the communities that are on that 2030 timeline, the environmental justice communities. And so the initial focus of the accelerator will be on serving those school districts that are located in distressed municipalities. And we're going to be offering the fleet electrification planning services for those school districts for free. And our friends at CALSTART are going to discuss that a little bit more in a minute. But just wanted to provide some of the kind of background and strategy for that decision. So in the definitional component of environmental justice community, essentially all of the distressed municipalities as of 2022 are sort of considered wholly environmental justice. And so essentially the whole school district is affected by that definition. And so those are the districts that we think will likely need the most support in electrifying their school bus fleets. And then there are also in addition to the planning support, there are also kind of reserved pots of funding at the state level for distressed municipalities. And so we think that this is sort of the right target market to be serving in the near term. And so we're hoping that with this webinar, we're able to get good outreach to those specific school districts and then bring them into the accelerator. Next slide, Jenny. Perfect. So for this year, like I mentioned, we're going to be focused on serving those distressed municipality school districts. We're going to be using a cohort-based model, and that's not necessarily in the context of, going through the accelerator with other school districts and like comparing notes. This is more of just a cohort for organizational purposes and to kind of time some of the planning components around the school year. And so we hope to run 2 cohorts this year. And ideally, we would recruit cohorts schools that own and operate their own buses, and then those that are working with the private sector. In Connecticut are third-party operators, and so we're really excited to be working with those companies and hope to work with a diverse mix throughout the cohort and then on the investment side as well. And then we'd also like to do some of this work in both urban and rural communities so that at the Green Bank, we can get a better sense of what the specific needs of those school districts are and what we can do on the investment side to best support them. And then the final thing I'll mention here is that as part of all of this planning work that we're going to be doing in tandem with CALSTART, we really don't want this to be the sort of thing where a plan just sits on a shelf and never results in a lot of action. And so we're really focused on having these planning studies and these roadmaps that will kind of be the main deliverable of the fleet electrification planning stage, being a funding access tool. So we're envisioning a school district and their school bus operator receiving a roadmap that allows them to append that to a state or federal grant application and just really tell a story of being incredibly prepared to pursue school bus electrification, and that they're proposing kind of the right size project for their school district, their school bus yard, all of those things, and essentially just communicate expertise and background research in a way that makes, either state or federal agencies really confident in the likelihood of success of that project. So planning to funding is certainly our MO at the Green Bank. And then I will now turn it over to our friends at CALSTART to introduce themselves a bit and share a bit about both the planning stage of the accelerator and then the deployment stage as well. Jenny, it's all you.
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Rachel Chard. I'm our Deputy Director of Electric School Buses here at CALSTART. As Kevin mentioned, we have been selected as the administrator for this program, but really it's a partnership with Connecticut Green Bank in an effort to hopefully see more school bus fleets electrified. So if you're not familiar with CALSTART, we are a mission-based nonprofit. We work both nationally and internationally and have over 200 member companies that together we work to advance clean and efficient transportation solutions. This project in particular is sort of a joint effort between our Northeast Regional Office, and you'll hear from one of my colleagues there, as well as my team, our electric school bus team. You'll also hear from one of my colleagues there. But our specialty is kind of providing these services to fleets. So we've been doing fleet transition planning through a number of programs across the country. And you may also be familiar with the electric school bus network that we operate here at CALSTART. This is where we provide resources and sort of facilitate a meeting space for folks like yourself, but really all stakeholders within the school bus electrification space. So those are a few areas that you may be familiar with CALSTART, but we look forward to working with all of you. And I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague, Jenny.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer Kritzler. I'm the Deputy Director for CALSTART's Northeast Regional Office, and I live here in Hartford, Connecticut. So really excited to be doing some work with you all in my home state. And we're just going to dive into a little bit more detail about what fleets can expect from this program and, what you need to provide us, what we'll be giving you, and how we can create a great partnership to get some more electric buses deployed in the state. As Kevin mentioned, this is going to be a cohort model. So the first part of the accelerator program is going to be the fleet electrification planning. And each school that works with us will receive personalized analysis, including on-site assessment from our partners. And the main deliverable is going to be that full transition report that Kevin mentioned, and also a presentation that you can use to share with decision makers throughout your town, your school district, your contractor, etc. If you do sign up to work with us, we will be taking you through the intake form, which my colleague Sarah is going to walk you through in just a moment. But we would expect the school district participation to be about 2 times per month. We'd be doing a Teams or Zoom meeting. We'd be sharing data, operational data, procurement data, etc. So as Kevin mentioned, that deliverable is the report, and we really want to use that report as a jumping off point, as a springboard to getting fleets to deploy electric school buses. So taking the information that's contained in the report and using that to move forward with procurement. So any school that does want to go forward with procurement would go into the fleet deployment phase, where we would be working with you in depth to support you throughout the procurement and commissioning of those school buses. And obviously it's going to be a great partnership with Connecticut Green Bank because they're going to be able to provide financing to alleviate some of the capital costs of that. And throughout the deployment phase, with the buying of the vehicles, we would ask the school districts participate in regular meetings, obviously, as we're working together to get those buses on the ground. Now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Sarah, to walk you through some of the details of the program.
Thanks, Jenny. So my name is Sarah Salkup-Jones. I am on the electric school bus team here at CALSTART with Rachel as a project manager. And one of the main things that I do here at CALSTART is fleet electrification planning. So I'm going to take you through some of the information that we collect in order to do our fleet transition planning, and then walk you through some of the outputs that you would see as a result. So for our fleet electrification planning process, we work with you starting with a fleet intake form. We'll do an introductory meeting and walk you through the form, but this information we collect includes things like our current fleet makeup, annual mileage, operational schedule and routing, fuel and maintenance costs, utility rate structures, and fleet goals. That'll help really give us an idea of what goals we have to move forward and what we're working with the fleet. We will also be working with you guys to collect supplemental information such as utility bills, route location data, and technology preferences. The more fleet-specific information we can collect, the more tailored the resulting report will be. But we also like to let fleets know ahead of time that almost any data can be supplemented or replaced. We know that not every fleet collects the same information to the same level of specificity. So we're here to work with you all to figure out what data you've collected, how we can implement that into the plan, and then what we can do to help supplement any data gaps that we might have. And then, as I have mentioned here at the bottom, like I said, any data can be supplemented, but the more that we can work with you to collect fleet-specific data, the more specific our plan results will be. Next slide, please. So once we work with you on that fleet intake information, then we'll do our analysis, and here are some examples of some of the outputs you would be looking to receive. So number one, we know that total cost of ownership is a big thing for school districts and operators alike. So we'll work with you for a total cost of ownership analysis. We'll start off by identifying appropriate bus models that might fit your needs. As you can see here, we have some examples of some of the different makes and models on the road, and some background information such as range, how fast they charge, things like that, to make sure that they would fit your operational models, and then use that information to plug into the total cost of ownership. On the right side of the screen here, you can see that we have a couple of example outputs, all comparing a zero emission vehicle, so your electric school bus, to an ICE or internal combustion engine vehicle. So giving you a couple of scenarios looking at what would it look like if I continued to pursue diesel or gas, and then what would it look like if I switched and started pursuing electric school buses. We'll also provide a breakdown of the total cost of ownership by cost components. So where are you going to see your savings? As you can see from this example, we would expect savings from fuel cost, but that capital cost for electric school buses might be a little bit higher. So another component that you'll also be receiving in this total cost of ownership is a comparison of a non-incentivized purchase. So what it would look like if you were paying out of pocket. And then we'll also do a review of what applicable funding opportunities and financing opportunities you could take advantage of, to also let you know what it would look like if you were able to take advantage of incentives and hopefully lower that capital cost there. Next slide, please. We will also be working with a local partner in Connecticut to do site assessments. So these are on-the-ground assessments that will help give us an idea of what your existing site capacity and infrastructure looks like at your sites. That'll help us, establish what type of work we'll need to do with your utility to expand as we progress in your fleet transition. And then we'll also let us know, what we need to be taking account of as we're planning out your transition timeline, in respect to how much capacity do you already have at the site? What equipment do you already have? If you need to upgrade, when do you need to upgrade, and about how long those lead times might be as you move through the process. This also gives you an idea of roughly where we would expect charger installation to be. As you can see on these graphics here, you can see that there are little indicators where we'd expect certain types of chargers. If your fleet is planning to have a couple of different varieties of chargers, that would also help us identify, what spacing you need to be able to accommodate those. And next slide. And as I mentioned earlier, we're also going to be working with you all to develop an adoption timeline based on your goals, your needs, and a lot of times we work with fleets to help align this with what the current retirement timeline is, whether that's with your school district specifically, or if you're working with an operator, how we can fit that in, because we know it doesn't make sense typically to replace a full fleet at once, unless there is a super good funding opportunity. So what we do here is we take a look at what retirement schedule you have, what fleet goals you have, and chart that out over the lifespan of the transition. So this graph that you can see here on the left gives an overview of the number of proposed new electric school buses and what years we expect them to be adopted in, and then how many total electric school buses would be in the fleet by that time. As you can see, this is a smaller fleet example here with a total of 15 vehicles, so how that transition would play out over time. This also will include an estimate of when you will need what chargers to accommodate those school buses as well. And then in order to inform what level of chargers we need, we will also be working with you to perform route energy modeling. So this gives us an idea of how these buses will run in your specific geography. All vehicles come with an expected kilowatt per mile or mile per kilowatt hour for electric vehicles from the OEM. But just like your average light duty car, we know that those are typically idealized numbers, typically run off of test tracks and typically not ran in the harsher New England winters. So what we do here is we take an overview of the types of routes that are run in the area, you know, stop and go traffic, is it hilly? And then also what your local weather is like. So understanding what the annual ambient temperatures are going to be to help us break out what is a more likely efficiency number, your miles per gallon equivalent for the electric. And then we also break out how much of that would be expected to be used for traction, so propelling the vehicle, and then how much of that battery capacity we're going to need to reserve to make sure that you can run those colder winter routes when the heater is drawing down your capacity. And then that helps us inform how many chargers we're going to need and how fast they're going to need to be to get turnarounds for things like afternoon trips. Next slide, please. So those are some examples of some of the outputs you would see in the plan. And then here is sort of an overview of the key deliverables that you would receive in that final report. So starting off, electric school bus basics, this will be everything that you need to know about the transition, as well as just some background information in easy to understand language. As I mentioned, we'll be providing vehicle and charger recommendations. So giving you an overview of what models are on the market that are going to be useful for your fleet, and then how many chargers and what speed we will need for each vehicle to be able to complete your daily routes. We'll include those total cost of ownership projections, that on-site assessment, those procurement timelines, including infrastructure upgrades and the bus and the electric school bus charging procurement. And then, as I mentioned before, we will also be including an outline of any of those funding and incentive opportunities and financing opportunities that would be available to you to take advantage of. Next slide, please. And then, as Jenny mentioned, for fleets that work with us through this transition planning process and then decide to move into procurement, that's where that fleet deployment assistance will come in. So that will be that in-depth support, including a more accurate financial analysis using the specific numbers that you're getting as you're going through procurement, stakeholder analysis, and identifying key players and who to contact when, installation support, construction and commissioning planning, and then working with you to support workforce development and training. And I believe this is where I hand it back to the Green Bank team to talk a little bit more about financing.
Perfect, thanks, Sarah. So yeah, I just wanted to share with folks some of the kind of investment offerings that we can provide at the Green Bank. So I'd say from the top, what we're going to be doing is mostly in a braided funding capacity. So this would be, using either a federal or a state grant to defray the cost of the buses, the chargers, or some of the electric system upgrades that are associated with electrifying a fleet of school buses. And then essentially the Green Bank financing can come in behind that initial grant funding to lower costs as much as possible. So say specifically at the Green Bank, we can finance 3 hardware components. So that's the buses, the charging stations, and then the make-ready infrastructure. I'd say you can take a loose understanding of the timeline that's here on the screen in terms of the 10 years, 5 years, and 20 years. I think that would be, we would go up to that amount of time working directly with the school district if they owned a school bus yard where they were doing the electric system upgrades, for example. I'd say generally speaking, when we're working with a in an operator context, we generally tend to tether the financing term to the term of the agreement between the operator and the school district. And so that's why that 10-year contracting authority that I mentioned at the beginning is such a positive game changer for us, and the being able to put together as flexible of a financing structure as we can. And then in addition to those 3 hardware components, we do essentially just have the capacity to offer, sort of as needed financing solutions. And so most of the way we see that working is in the form of bridge loans. And so one really great kind of easy use case is that for any, state grant award that you were to receive, is that we could offer financing equal to that grant award. And so that essentially results in either a school district or a school bus operator not having to expend that capital in the meantime ahead of getting reimbursed by the grant. So that can just make it a lot easier from I'd say, budgetary standpoint and a financial stress standpoint to pursue these sorts of, kind of capital intensive projects. So that's a really easy way that Green Bank financing can be integrated to the overall project plan. And then I will note, I know I mentioned the PURA docket earlier on, that's also something we could do in a utility incentives capacity. So we have a strong working relationship with both Eversource and United Illuminating, and so if utility incentives become available for these projects, we could certainly do bridge loans in that capacity as well. And then we can do creative things on the federal tax credit side as well to maximize access to those resources. And we've now reached the question and answers stage. So both the Green Bank and the CalSTART team are happy to answer any questions that folks have, either about the planning program, the deployment program, the Green Bank's investment offerings, or on the policy or regulatory side as well. And if folks would rather use the chat function as well to submit questions, that works for us as well.
I guess
Great,
while
so
we're
we
waiting
just
for questions, sorry, I was going to say, I guess while we're waiting for questions, I just want to reiterate that the program is completely free to school districts to participate, and this is an amazing opportunity, regardless of where you are in the journey of transitioning to electric vehicles, to take advantage of getting that personalized report, to have kind of the transition plan laid out for you so that you can use that to make an informed decision. And so I just really want to say thank you to the Green Bank for creating this program, and we're really excited to work with the school districts in Connecticut.
Agreed, yeah, co-sign that, Jenny. I do see one question that is, what is the current status of the federal direct incentives? I'd say that for the EPA Clean School Bus Program is really the main one that has awarded funds in Connecticut. All of those funds are starting to flow, whether they were on the grant side or the rebate side. So I'd say that previously awarded projects are at the moment able to tap into their funding. And then looking forward, I think it's a little bit of a mystery as to if or when that program will reopen. There was an application round hosted in January before the administration change, and so it's unclear if those applications will be kind of considered as is, or if folks will be encouraged to reapply. But I personally anticipate some of that Clean School Bus funding opening up in the months to come. And then I'd say that on the tax credit side, that's also a bit of a mystery as the House and the Senate work through their budget bills for the year. And CalSTART team, feel free to offer any additions on the federal funding side for now.
Yeah, keep in mind, this is just what we're hearing. This isn't a fully, accurate answer. What we're hearing is that the Clean School Bus Program will resume at some point. It may look slightly different. So we're anticipating it may not favor zero emissions as much as it has in the past. And then we're hearing the tax credits will likely be eliminated after this year. So good news, bad news there, I guess, a little bit. All of that is still up in the air, so that's not a guarantee, but that's kind of the way things seem to be leaning lately.
Yeah, and that being said, I guess I'll take another optimistic angle, which I think is that, in the absence of federal program funding, that there is an opportunity for the state of Connecticut to step up in support of the policy goals that it has in statute. And I think, working with the Green Bank essentially, enables schools and school bus operators to kind of get synced up with like a quarterback of sorts, where we are able to really, work closely with our partner agencies at DEEP and DECD and others to get you the funding that you need. And so we have a lot of confidence in our ability to put the right things together at the state level to keep school bus electrification momentum moving in the right direction in Connecticut.
I see another question in the chat. How will you collaborate both with districts and operators jointly? And that's a great question. And I can let Rachel expand on that a little bit, but we definitely want to work with districts that are working with a third-party operator or have a contract. We can take a look at how you're using your vehicles and also how you're working with the operators.
Yeah, to elaborate a little bit more, it really is going to depend on how your contract is set up with your operator. Kind of the intake form that Sarah went through with you, a lot of that is operational data. So if your third party is the one that's doing the operations, we'll want to hopefully receive some of that information from them and be able to kind of build out a plan to help them electrify in relation to your contract. But then there's other areas we can look at of, where do you charge? How do you charge? How is the contract structured? Things like that. So it's really going to be kind of case by case in how your relationship is with that third party operator.
Jenny, are you seeing any more questions on either side of the chat or the Q&A function?
I am not seeing any other questions.
Just one more just came in.
Oh.
Who are the best participants from the school side, business officer, transportation coordinator? I'm going to let Sarah take this. She has a good kind of answer for this that she typically says.
Yeah. So I think it's typically important to have a couple of people involved. We might not need everyone there for every single meeting, but especially as we're working with you for the data collection, it's usually very helpful to have the transportation director or someone who is involved in the day-to-day for the buses. Sometimes if your district has someone who's specifically dedicated to routing, that's really helpful to have them involved in the initial data collection process. And then it is typically helpful to either have someone from the business side of things either attend or at least identify who that person is, so that when we ask you to collect some of that financial data, you know who to go to and how to get that data collected. I think the best sort of trifecta that we've seen is a transportation director, someone from a routing department, and then someone who works on the business side of things is who we encourage folks to bring.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Are we seeing any others? Or is that it?
I don't see any others at this time.
Great. Well, then I think we can go to the next slide. So at the Green Bank, now that we're getting into the business of supporting school bus electrification, we've started to essentially organize some of our school-oriented offerings under a Green Schools page on our website. And so we wanted to do a little bit of cross promotion for our solar marketplace assistance program, which is specifically focused for schools. So in a couple weeks, we'll be having a sort of equivalent conversation on the solar side. And so with the fact that we have some school district folks on the line today, we wanted to make it easy for you all to register for that webinar to see if putting solar on your school district would be a good fit. And so I'll leave this up for a little bit. And then I'd say in terms of next steps, one of the great things about working in a smaller state is that the Green Bank can kind of handle a lot of the I'd say the incomings that we're receiving from the market. So I'd say that if you know either someone at a school district or a school bus operator that would be interested in participating in the accelerator, you can just email me directly at kevin.moss@ctgreenbank.com, and we can go to the next slide so you can see that contact information. And so I'm happy to handle kind of the incomings that are flowing into us for the accelerator, and then we'll sync up with the folks at CalSTART and with our community outreach manager as well, so that we can get folks into this program and begin the I'd say medium to long-term process of planning for a school bus deployment. So we're really excited to be launching this program, and thank you everyone for attending today.